It was the 8th of February, 1974, when the first F-16 took flight with its massive swept-back wings and a diamond-shaped cockpit that was canted 30 degrees to the right of center for better visibility. This new fighter jet from General Dynamics was to become one of the most successful and prolific aircraft in history. But why? Why is it still being produced today, some 48 years later? What makes this fighter so special? We all answer these questions, and many more, as we take a look at the amazing story of the F-16 Fighting Falcon. Our story begins, like most military aircraft do, with a specification or a set of requirements released by the United States Air Force. In this case, it was for a lightweight, low-cost fighter with advanced avionics that could be operated from austere airstrips. The Air Force called it the FSV, or Fighter Supersonic, Low Cost. To put it simply, the Air Force wanted a cheap fighter jet that could go supersonic and carry various air-to-air and air-to-surface weapons. There was just one problem, though: the YF-17 Cobra, which had been developed to meet a similar requirement, had failed to live up to expectations, and it soon became apparent that the FSV program would have to start from scratch. Now, this was an uncommon situation for the U.S. during the 60s and 70s. They seemed to be starting new projects all the time. But the reason for this prolific production of new hardware was simple. They were in the middle of the Vietnam War, and things weren't going very well. So the U.S. needed a steady flow of new equipment to keep their forces competitive against the enemy. But despite this rather pressing issue, nobody expected the FSV program to move particularly quickly. It was, after all, only intended to field around 800 aircraft. And so, it was somewhat of a surprise when the contract was awarded to General Dynamics just 15 months after the project started. Nevertheless, this didn't stop the dedicated team at General Dynamics, working tirelessly to develop what would become one of the most iconic aircraft in history. The name Fighting Falcon was submitted by a local high school student in a naming competition, and it was thought to be appropriate as the aircraft's official emblem was a screaming falcon. Despite the quick turnaround, the F-16's development was not without its setbacks. The early prototypes struggled with instability issues, and the project was almost canceled altogether. When Congress decided to divert funds to other programs, but thanks to the hard work of engineers and continued support from the Air Force, these problems were overcome and the F-16 was eventually declared operational in 1978. What makes the F-16 particularly interesting is how it bridged the gap between two eras of combat aviation. You see, the era of dogfighting and aerial gunnery was coming to an end, and the use of long-range air-to-air missiles, combined with the introduction of VTOL, or vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, was on the horizon. The F-16 was therefore one of the last fighters to be designed with a primary role of engaging enemy fighters in close quarters combat, while also paving the way for the next generation of multirole platforms with its excellent control authority at low speeds and highly reliable underwing hardpoints. The F-16 was an ideal training and teaching platform, and so today there are more F-16s in the world serving as trainers than actual fighters. But this transition from a dogfighter to a multirole platform was unlimited to just the way the aircraft was used, but also in its design philosophy. See the original concept for the FSV, or fighter. Supersonic, low cost, called for a tailless, straight-edge design that looked something like a flying wedge. Now, whilst this would have been aerodynamically efficient, it wouldn't have allowed for large internal fuel stores, nor would it have provided the directional stability that the Air Force demanded. So ultimately, the classic tail configuration was used instead. But even with this more conventional setup, the F-16 still manages to be extremely aerodynamically efficient, allowing it to supercruise or fly at supersonic speeds without the need for afterburners, which in turn drastically reduces its fuel consumption. This efficiency, combined with its relatively small size for a fighter jet, means that the F-16 has a very impressive specific fuel consumption, or SFC figure, of 0.085 pounds of fuel per pound of thrust, which is about half that of the mighty F-22 Raptor. But this efficiency comes at a price that's paid by the pilot every single time he or she takes to the skies in an F-16. You see, the F-16 is notorious for putting its pilots through some pretty intense G-forces. Now, although the exact figure isn't known due to various classified documents, it's widely believed that the F-16 can pull off sustained 9G maneuvers with short-duration spikes of up to 11 or 12 gigaseconds. These figures may seem tame compared to other fighter jets like the Su-37 or the Eurofighter Typhoon, which can both pull off upwards of 20 gigaseconds. But don't forget that these aircraft are much heavier than the F-16, meaning that the Fighting Falcon actually experiences much higher dynamic pressures when maneuvering. So if you happen to be on the receiving end of an F-16's guns when it's performing a high-speed, high-angle of attack maneuver, then chances are you're not going to make it. But the incredible maneuverability of the F-16 isn't just down to the shape of the aircraft or the power of its engines. It's also down to the skill of its designers, who managed to include leading-edge extensions or LECs on the wings, which effectively increase the wing area at low speeds for better controllability. They also used something called reflex or reverse flow control surfaces on the tail, which basically means that the upper surface of the elevators and the upper surface of the rudder face upwards towards the sky. This allows the airflow to accelerate over the control surfaces, providing increased effectiveness at low speeds. These design features, coupled with the use of powerful hydraulic controls and fly-by-wire technology, made the F-16 incredibly responsive to pilot input, earning it the nickname the F-16, the airplane, amongst pilots because it feels more like a fighter version of a sports car than a typical fighter jet. Speaking of sports cars, it's probably no coincidence that the F-16 has gone through more upgrades and improvements than any other fighter in history. It's because the constant pressure to keep up with the competition has forced the manufacturers to continually improve the F-16 or risk losing business to rival aircraft like the F-15 Eagle, the F-15E Strike Eagle, the F/A-18 Hornet, and the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. For example, the F-16A was upgraded to the F-16A Block 10 with improved radar and the addition of an APG-66 radar, which gave the aircraft the ability to engage multiple targets simultaneously. This capability was further enhanced with the F-16 MLU, or midlife update, which saw the addition of the powerful and reliable APG-66 radar. And with the latest Block 70 version, the F-16 now incorporates an active electronically scanned array, or a ESA radar. Now, although this upgrade might sound minor when you consider that older versions already had radar, the improvement in capability is astronomical. That's because the F-16A, with its mechanically scanned radar, could only track and engage one target at a time, whereas the Block 70 can track up to 20 targets simultaneously while flying at speeds of up to Mach 2.2. It's not just the electronics that have been upgraded either. In fact, the entire airframe has benefited from several upgrades over the years. For example, the Block 40 and 50 versions of the F-16 incorporated composite materials into the airframe to reduce weight and increase fuel efficiency. The latest Block 70s take this one step further by featuring an all-new design incorporating composite materials and stealthy design elements. In fact, the latest F-16 is so advanced that it essentially acts as a flying testbed for emerging technologies like directed energy weapons and loyal wingman-style combat drones. And so it seems that the F-16 will continue to play an important role in the United States Air Force for many years to come. But what about other nations that operate the F-16? Well, they too have benefited from the latest upgrades, and many have even incorporated their own national upgrades. For example, Israel, which operates the largest fleet of F-16s, outside of the U.S., has upgraded its aircraft to the Super Falcon standard, which includes the latest electronic countermeasures, the APG-66 radar, and the ability to carry the Israeli-built Gabriel Air 2 surface missiles. Other notable F-16 operators include Turkey, with its indigenous TF-34, a version specifically designed for the Turkish Air Force in Egypt, which operates a mixed fleet of F-16s from the A to the latest Block 52+ versions. But as good as the F-16 is, it's not without its faults. Many pilots have complained about the lack of a back seat, which can make flying the aircraft for extended periods uncomfortable. The fixed canopy can be a bit of a hindrance when it comes to air-to-ground operations, as it restricts the pilot's field of view when looking down at the ground. However, some versions of the F-16 do feature a sliding canopy, which helps alleviate this problem somewhat. Another criticism that's often leveled at the F-16 is its lack of range. which is partly due to the small size of the aircraft and partly due to the relatively small internal fuel stores. However, this issue can be mitigated somewhat by the use of external fuel tanks, although doing so does add significant drag and reduces the aircraft's agility. Despite these shortcomings, the F-16 remains one of the most popular and prolific fighter jets ever built, with over 4,600 examples delivered since it entered service in 1978. In fact, so popular that there are currently more F-16s in service today than when it first entered service. A testament to its reliability, ease of maintenance, and overall effectiveness as a fighter jet. But what do you think of the F-16? Do you think it's one of the greatest fighter jets ever built? Or do you think it's overrated? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more great videos.